so I used to record in our office, but now Mr. Reids Romance works from home in that office. So I often am doing it in this bedroom. So we're streaming to YouTube and I'm talking about my house. Sorry, everybody.
Hello, YouTube.
Yay. All right.
Hey, everyone.
Yay. Do we know if people watch or is it just, you just go and then see?
It'll say when it does. I've put it on mute so I can kind of keep track. And so if my eyes are like weird, that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
I'm like on YouTube instead of Zoom.
Sure.
So yeah.
It's amazing what you can do with your computer, right?
It is.
Happy anniversary, Love Sweet Arrow.
Woo!
It's so exciting. Yay.
Yes, it is. And it's been a fun year.
Yes.
Rosa?
Well, you picked a really great year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right?
Really very solid choice for the year. My mother-in-law actually sent me, I'm sure you've all seen this meme too, but she sent me, it was the first time I'd seen it. It was like the clip of the Back to the Future clip where Doc and what's his name?
Marty.
Michael J. Fox, Marty are in the car and Doc's, and underneath it says, first rule, never set it to 2020.
Yeah.
I was like, that's a great meme.
Yes.
That's good. That's good.
So, but how are things at Love Sweet Arrow? What's happening up there?
I mean, we're just plugging away. Roseanne finally, she's, ready to come back to the store after a couple weeks. So we're excited about that. And
Nice.
just,
To
trying
help Rosa catch up on the orders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you guys still doing your special boxes?
Yes.
Yes.
Those will be kind of indefinitely as we need it. Because when we open, it's only going to be a couple of days a week.
Okay.
Just in case they decide, oh, we have to close again. Then it's,
Right.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. So we're going to do Thursday through Sundays.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
And Fridays, 11 to 8. And then Saturdays and Sundays will stay 11 to 6. We could go down to 6 if it seems like people aren't coming in a lot and just do 11 to 6. But that's our plan for now.
Perfect.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So, I mean, you do have a lot of orders that you're doing. I mean, was that people were pretty on top of that?
Yeah. I think there's been like a week here and there where it was slow, but I mean, understandably, not everyone can, buy books from local independent bookstore every week. So,
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
we felt that there's been a lot of support
Good.
that way.
Definitely. Yeah. And a lot of people continue to buy, which is fabulous. There are probably 100 people, don't you think, Marissa, bought from us 2 or 3 times.
Wow. That's amazing.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, it has been. I feel like I know them, even though I've never met them. Like, well, I don't know what you like.
Well, sure.
So,
I feel like if I could really sit down with your bookshelves, I would know a whole lot about you, right?
Yeah.
That could
And
be a
don't you
game we
feel-
play, right, Sarah? We should have people send us pictures of their bookshelves, and we'll be like, now read this.
Yes.
Let's do that. Send that to us on Twitter. That will be a fun game that will keep me from writing.
Oh,
are we
That's
looking?
exactly. That's what I'm looking for always. Just good excuses. I'll just tell people it's work. I'm just it's important that I do this.
I hope your editor isn't watching, Sarah. He'll send you a picture of our bookshelves, and it'll just be all your books, and then a little question mark. And you'll be like, damn it.
With space at the end for the next one that you're supposed to be working on, right?
Exactly.
Well, before we talk about the next one you're working on, why don't we talk about the one that's coming out in 2 weeks?
I have a book coming out in 2 weeks. 2 weeks and 1 day.
Woo!
2 weeks tomorrow.
That's right.
Very exciting. It's called, I just so happen to have a copy of it right here, Jen.
Nice. Well done, Sarah. Is that the one you're signing for me?
We did not plan this. But yes, I have a book coming out. It's called Daring and the Duke. And it is gorgeous. Avon has done a gorgeous, gorgeous job. This woman, April, is her real name. Her name is Grace in the book, but in real life, her name is April. And she's a former Miss New York from the Miss America pageant.
Ooh.
And she sure looks like it. She is beautiful. So
I love the red hair.
yes, she was the perfect Grace. So yeah, it's the last book in the series. People seem to be very excited to know how I've turned a ship around. And hopefully I have turned a ship around. Jen assures me I have
turned around. It is around, everybody. Don't worry about it.
But she's kind of required to tell me that. I mean, it would be weird if we had a podcast and you were like, your book was terrible.
You were like, oh, awkward. I'd be like that, like, no, it is actually really wonderful. And Sarah's heard me say this, and we're really excited too. If you're interested in a preview of the book on this week's episode of Fated Mates, we're doing an interview with audiobook narrator Justine Eyre, and she has narrated the past 7
books. She started with Never Judge a Lady by Her Cover.
Yeah.
Oh, and 7.5 because she also narrated the Christmas novellas.
Oh, interesting. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, at the end of this week's episode of Fated Mates, we have the first 2 chapters of the audio of Daring and the Duke, so you can get a little preview, which is very exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. Sarah, I want to talk more about Daring and the Duke for a second. We're gonna have special episodes, but it's your.
All right, I didn't know we were doing this. I mean, I knew we were doing this. I didn't know we were talking about my book.
I think okay? We should talk about romances, don't you think, Paul?
Absolutely.
I thought we were just going to talk about Cressley Cole. Isn't that what we do?
Okay, I would also like to talk about that. Monroe, she could come out with her new book and keep these women in business for a solid month off of her sales.
I wish she would just drop it like Beyonce tomorrow.
Yes.
I would like for her to drop it any time other than the day
June
that
30th.
I wrote my book.
Right.
Cressley, if you're listening.
Can July 1st?
Yes. No. Yeah, a couple weeks although I don't want anyone to get too excited. We have no insider information.
No.
And that is total. That is gallows humor from people who basically just think
we've given up.
We've given up. Yeah. Sometimes you guys.
I haven't given up. I'm sure she is writing. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. But I've given up, sort of expecting it. So now when it comes, it will be a little gift.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I've given up, but I'm hopeful. I mean, Hilary Mantel wrote the 3rd book after Wolf Hall years later. And
exactly. And yes, exactly.
So it could happen. But
Harper Lee came all the way after.
Are you really bringing up Mockingbird? Are you just
okay, let's not talk. No, do nonsense. We're not going to talk about Mockingbird with Jen.
I was like, oh, Sarah, I thought we were friends.
It's not a romance. We're safe.
Yeah, it's true. One of the things that's really interesting about how is writing the last book of a series, does that feel more pressure filled?
Yes. Especially, here's the thing, it doesn't always. So I always tend to back myself into these corners with the last book in the series. I started, I guess all my series have sort of done that. Although 11 Scandals, I was still figuring out what a Sarah MacLean series looked like. But that romance in that book was a setup. I mean, you sort of knew from the beginning that was going to be the pairing. Right. And it was going to be kind of contentious. And then the Casino series, I knew the last book in the Casino series from the very beginning. I couldn't have written it without knowing what that book was. But it was only pressure for me because no one else knew what that last book was until they'd read the end of the 3rd book. Right. And then Day of the Duchess, which was the last book in Scandal and Scoundrel, was also a kind of, it was a second chance, villainous villainous hero. He cheats on her on page in the 1st book. So setting myself a kind of high bar to clear. And that one that one was pressure because I knew so many people hated him so much that because they had seen, I mean, what is considered to be the only unacceptable action of a romance hero, it seems, in romance is infidelity. And they'd seen that on the page. So that was stressful. And now, but with Ewan, it's different, right? Because he's been a true villain for 2 books.
Yeah.
And the story is like he betrayed them. And we've seen that betrayal on page, and we've seen the repercussions of that betrayal. And we have seen that how terrible that betrayal has been for all of them. And so I couldn't erase that. And I think the pressure with this book was very high because I wanted to clear a bar that I knew every single reader, even the ones who trust me the most, like you, were going to be like, how, from page 1, like the most glorious moment in any romance novel is the moment where the reader says, how is she ever going to pull this off?
Right.
But with Ewan and Grace, you've been asking that question for 3 books.
Right.
And so have I. But then you're too far down the rabbit hole. Like I can't
undo it.
Around and be like, well, surprise, he's not the hero anymore.
Y'all, when it comes to book selling, like, do you feel like it's like, what happens if someone comes in and says, I want the new Sarah McLean novel, and you say, like, do you ask if they've read the first 2? Like, how does selling like a series work from the bookseller side?
Well, I kind of look at it as if they haven't read the other ones, it's an opportunity for them to like go back and read them all. I do try to address it like, oh, this is the, it's part of a kind of a series, and so it might help if you read the first couple. And then just because I know where I've jumped in and I'm like, oh, I'm missing something. And then
right.
back and read all the other ones. But because someone came in like in like the winter, I think, and it was like, oh, like she grabbed Forbidden by Beverly Jenkins, and I was like, it's part of a series. And she came back like a week later, and she's like, I need to get the rest of this.
Well, that's like the greatest thing about a series, right? Like, just like, give me more of these people. In fact, when we read, like, our last episode of Fated Mates was A Kingdom of Dreams by Judith McNaught, and there's this taciturn man who doesn't speak words, and I was like, but where's his book? And I googled it. I was like, Eric, A Kingdom of Dreams. No book. Like, we need an AO3 for romance where people just like write, I don't even know, just give me a couple sentences, right?
He found secondary love stories. Yeah.
Right.
No, but that's true. I mean, that's such a romance reader thing too. I think that's a thing that anytime my friends who don't read romance novels discover that what I do for a living, and they sort of ask me like, oh, can I read one of your books? I'll pick a book that I think is best suited to them. And then, they'll come back and invariably say like, oh, that was great. Thank you so much. Like, what else have you written? And I'll say, well, that's 1 of 4, or that's 1 of 3. And it blows their minds a little bit that like the characters, that they've seen the characters before. And it's what's amazing is it's so innate to the romance reader that like every single character on page might at some point have their own book. We all sort of know that intuitively. And other readers don't look at books that way.
That's so fascinating. So a friend of mine from high school, y'all, texted me this morning, and she was like, oh my God, I'm reading, I laid in bed this morning and read Brazen and the Beast, and I can't wait for Daring and the Duke. And I was like, well timed, because it's only 2 weeks away. It's when you're like, it's a year from now that you're like feeling that pain. But she was like, am I going to get Nick and Nora's story? And I was like, I've trained you well. You knew.
You knew to expect it.
Right? But then it's hard when you don't get that.
Oh, it really is. I mean, it's so hard. Look at us. Like, look at how many books we've read over the last 2 years where we've said like, oh, I really wish she would do something with this character. Or like we have a list a mile long of like secondary and tertiary characters from IAD that we would like do
yeah.
murder to get books for. So
DeShazer, and we have like whole entire ships.
Shazer, Loa.
Yes. So funny. So when someone, Marissa and Roseanne, do you get like cold calls and like, okay, so in a classroom, when you call on someone like, and they have not raised their hand, it's called a cold call, right? Like you're basically like, they don't know what's coming and they're just like, oh shit. So here's my question. Have you ever had people come into the store that are like, I've never read a romance, like sell me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so what happens? Tell us about that.
Well, if it's me, what I try to do is just ask them what they're interested in. Tell them about the different genres. You know, do they like historical? Would they like something contemporary? Are they looking for the naughty stuff? You know what I mean? You know?
Yeah.
And from there, then I think you just kind of, I just always have like authors or books in mind in case people come in. You know what I mean? Good starter series.
Right.
Like, can't go wrong with anything Alyssa Cole. You know what I mean? You could do historical, you could do contemporary. Who else? Beverly Jenkins, like Marissa said. So she's the awesome hand seller. Someone comes in and they stop me sometimes. And I'll say, Marissa, and she's like, Mom, you know this. I'm like, yeah, but you're good at it. So she is.
I think it's some, like maybe being a teacher is like, I think on the spot. But if someone comes in and they're not really sure, I try to see what kind of like steam level they're comfortable with. And then I always kind of think like when in doubt, pick an author of color, just because, to me, for both of us, it's really important. But I always, we had someone order a box and I put in one of the Priscilla Oliveira's the series.
Oh yeah, they're great, right?
I snuck that in, and then I got an email like a week later. I loved it, and so I put she ordered another box.
So great,
sure. Well, and I feel like if you have someone who's brand new, then like Discovery, like you really can like sell anything, right? Anything. Sell everything and anything. So that's really one thing that I think is really interesting about the store, and this is like now this is like for romance readers. Is typically when you're at like, or at least back in the day when you're at like Walden Books or even at Target, like category romances are separate from like sort of the rest of the shelves. And I think it's obviously because at Target, they're just like, they're taking those all out at the end of the month and like replacing them or whatever. But at Love Sweet Arrow, it's just by alphabetical order. I mean, there's genres.
I love that.
It's actually really cool.
Yeah.
To be like, hey, I'm looking at contemporary. And so Reese Ryan books are mixed in right next to Jennifer Ryan, as opposed to kind of being separated out and categories are kind of in a separate place. And it really does make for a really interesting browsing experience when you see like just everything sort of together. And then in the used room, it's sort of it's just alphabetical. There's no difference between subgenre. And it's kind of loosely, I don't think it's quite as, and it's really interesting because I feel like you see things differently that way when you're not like, okay, well, Harlequin is over in its own separate section.
Yeah.
Well, and we're as readers, we're so used to going into a bookstore and being kind of separated out anyway, that the idea that we would go anywhere and be centered is really, I think that's why 100 people have ordered multiple times from you. Like, romance is desperate for places to acknowledge that our books matter, right? Our books are important.
Yeah. I agree. And it's fun when people come in and they like, was it like last August, Marissa, or September? We had this lady come in off the street and she's like, I don't read romance. I don't want to join your membership because you could be a member and we stamp your card. And when you fill your card, you get a free 3 choices because Marissa's a teacher. So you get 3 choices with that card. And she's like, but my sister and her partner, after 25 years, are getting married. She's like, so of course I got her a really nice gift for the 2 ladies. She said, but I'm looking for LGBTQ books as a surprise. Oh my God, we had so much fun looking through there with her. I think she bought like 7 or 8 books.
That's awesome.
And we've never seen her since.
Yeah.
So, but
that's fine.
We bought her, like, that's like one book a month though, right? Like since you've been
For-
thinking about it that way.
For the regular people.
For the regular, I know. I'm like, well, it's funny because I actually, so this is another really like interesting question, I think maybe for all of us. So I actually, if once I've read a book, I tend to like pass it on, just also because there's so many coming in that I just get overwhelmed. And you know what I mean? Sometimes some of them I keep, like I definitely have a keeper shelf like most people, but I definitely will just kind of like move them on. There's a little free library down the block, and I view that as like my sacred duty to keep it filled with books. But it's really interesting to think about, like right now, I was like, I feel like I don't have very many, like it's a little low. And then I'm gonna like scan over here, like, and that's like low. Like that's like, I'm not sure that I have enough, everybody. I'm gonna maybe run out. There's only 100 of them there. A real problem, everyone.
Is that a TBR, Jen?
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah.
Stop judging me.
I'm not judging you. My TBR is 1,000 books long. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my Kindle TBR.
No, forget it. I buy everything. Somebody says, "Oh, you read this?" I'm like, "No, I literally pull out my phone and buy it right then."
Yeah, of course.
And
doing God's work.
That's what's so fun about romance Twitter, though, is that like every it seems like every 10 minutes there's like, oh, this book is awesome. This book is awesome. And I like get to the point where I just screenshot, and I started to write them all down a couple of years ago, and it just got overwhelming.
It was like a book. She had a book written.
I have like a notebook.
Yeah.
It got out of control.
And you have every intention of reading them all.
Of course.
Yeah. And then,
doesn't happen.
Gets away from you.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. TBRs are fine.
Yeah. Actually, and then some of them, it's funny that if I read a book I loved, I will buy it to have it. Mm-hmm. Because like I bought a lot of Sophie Jordan books because I'm like, I love them and I want to have them. Yeah. So
she's
interesting.
Great.
But yeah,
I've started collecting like the old school, partially because of the podcast, but also just in general, because after the Ritas last year, we worked so hard putting together the history, cobbling together the history of the firsts, like the people who had really been there kind of transforming the genre at the start. And I started to get really interested in collecting those books, like the books that were firsts for me. So, Jen actually sent me a copy of Elizabeth Lowell's Warrior.
Oh yeah.
To replace the copy that I have that's like where the cover is scotch taped on from using scotch tape from 1997. and it's traveled 12 houses with me. But so I've been collecting my firsts, but also the firsts of the genre. And so that's been a really fun thing to do over the last couple of months, because thrift stores are still willing to send them to me.
Yeah. Well, they make it really easy. I mean, I love, that's one of my favorite. I actually, at Love Sweet Arrow, have bought multiple copies of the same used book, Chain Lightning by Elizabeth Bolton, because I was like, oh my God, I was like, look at this Chain Lightning. And then I went home and I was like,
oh, I already had this.
I had that experience there at a previous point. You're going to need to put some sort of quality control on your inventory system. That's like, you already bought this.
Then you already bought this.
Now that you say that, I remember you buying it the first, I like thinking about it, I was like, wait, is this deja vu? I said, well, maybe I might have dreamed this, that she like just
I dreamed it.
No, you did not. That was me.
But that is also the other thing, earlier this week, I was, Andy Christopher texted me a photograph of a giant Tupperware bin that she found in like a hallway closet. And it was filled with category romances from the early thousands. Nice. And right on top was a, Jill Monroe. And I was like, I've read that book. I've read that book multiple times. And like peeling through, there's something really glorious, especially for romance readers, I think, going through all those books from the time you came to romance.
Yeah.
Or, in my case, that's a little later, but still like those, and being able to sort of say, oh, I remember that, because we do all remember them.
Yeah, it really
It's
is kind of
wild.
amazing. Well, and then I'm like, how is it I vividly remember these romances? I mean, this is like the fascinating thing to me is how some I remember so vividly, and then I've read, and then like 1,000 others that I'm like, did I read that? So it's just like, what's that like magic thing where your brain just like sticks on? It's really, I think it's one of my favorite
It's
things
all that
to
like
do.
primitive, like id shit.
Yes.
It's
Oh
like,
yeah. But it's like one of my favorite things to do.
Anytime a hero says mine, it imprints on my brain.
Like, oh. But I love that. I love talking to people about like the romances they remember, right? Not just what they love right now, which is also a fun conversation, but the ones where they're like, and then, and then there was this thing, and you're like, wait. I mean, my friend Ernesto texted me because his wife is getting into romance, and I like feed him books for her. He's like my conduit. And he's like, okay, so there's this one where it's like a biker and they have a meet cute at the Chipotle. And I was like, oh, I read that. I mean, I was like, that's it. That's just like one little piece of information.
But
we've
talked about this so many times on the podcast when we do AMAs. Like the easy AMAs are like the biker with the meet cute at the Chipotle. The hard ones are, I like enemies to lovers romance. Recommend me one. And we're like, we've never read. Suddenly, we've never read an enemies to lovers romance.
It's true,
Or
though.
like,
it is. That's harder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. You put a volcano. I'm like, my brain will read that. You're like, I like friends to lovers. I was like, well, go Google it then.
I don't know. Make friends with someone then. Fall in love.
Do you have folks that come into the store that say like it has a blue cover? I mean, like, what's like the funny? It must be that people have requests that like that. Does that happen? And how do you deal with it?
Stuff like that stumps me.
Sure.
Covers. I mean, one of the first romances I read, I'm like, I know there's a beach on the cover and a funeral.
And a funeral?
I'm all like, in the middle of the night, I'm gonna wake up and be like, I read that.
That's like the best. That's one of the best like rec requests ever. There was a funeral and a beach on the cover. Go.
Yeah. I always thought, being like, does anyone know what this is?
I have this the Old School Romance Book Club on Facebook, and that's. I mean, the women in there, the readers in there are really remarkable because you could do just that.
Right.
And within a day, within hours, it's been discovered. It's been found, the book.
We're going to have to do that, Marissa.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, Marissa, you should join if you're not a member.
Yeah, I am.
You
You
could
need to join this, so, yeah.
I know. I'm so bad. I just post dog pictures on Facebook.
It's fine.
It is funny though, the things though that like I have, okay, so I should tell you my greatest like want, the one I've been searching for forever. I have a very vivid memory of a book where these two people, I don't know, they must have been on some sort of adventure, but like either out in the wilderness, some shit like that, who knows? And it's coming to an end, right? Like they finally gotten back to civilization and it's like going to be this last night they're going to have together. And the hero sneaks away and like zips their sleeping bags together, which I was like, can you even really do that? Does that even effing work? And they get back to the tent and she's like, oh, and he's like, well, they think we're married, so I'm sure they just did it. But it turns out it was him all along. And so like, they get in there and do whatever. But I was like, how come I have this, like, what a weird little tiny thing to remember.
Mm-hmm.
And
but like you secretly dream of camping with Mr. Reids Romance, where he zips your.
No, God.
Is that your kink?
No, that's like the irony of it. It's like my anti-kink. Like camping. We used to camp when we lived in California, but because it was like pretty, but like camping.
This is what people do there.
Exactly. Camping in Illinois, it's like everything's flat. It's like so weird. We did it once and I was like, this is terrible. I don't understand this.
Yeah.
There's nothing to
Everything's flat.
It's true.
You can't camp in flat places.
Obviously, that is true.
There's no hills. You can't do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And they can only camp in the mountains. That is the rule. Everybody knows that. So funny. Do you guys have questions for us? I'm sorry, because we're doing the Jen and Sarah show. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
I told you something's gonna happen. My mind was gonna go blank.
I know. Well, I wrote down a couple of the books that I recently read that I like. How about you guys?
Yeah, sure. Why don't you
Sure,
start?
we can do that.
Then, yeah, definitely.
Well, Marissa got me for Mother's Day, her and Ethan, this book. And I know she doesn't want to read it because they're not very nice to each other. But I really like this book.
It's because it's at your house. I can't read it when it's at your house.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, you did give it to me, so it should be at my house, right?
Yeah,
but I really like this book. I when it came in, I said, "Oh, I really want to read that." So she bought it for me for Mother's Day. So
Aw.
that was good. Yeah.
That's nice. That's nice.
Technically, Ethan bought that one. I bought you the other.
So
But I like the premise of that. I have not read that book, but I like the premise of that book because I like the idea of two unlikable people like having to be unlikable with each other. And kind of you know, everybody has that couple friend. Maybe it's just me.
Maybe if you don't have that couple friend, you
Maybe
are that
you
couple
are
friend.
that
That's
couple
always
friend.
my fear. You're like, oh.
Everyone has that couple friend, that couple friend that's where you're like the only two people who could be with like that is the only couple that could exist with either one of those parties.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I feel that book. That's what I have that book here on my shelf, on my TV, on my endless TBR pile because of that. That's definitely my jam.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Wait, Marissa, you don't like enemies to lovers?
No, I do. I don't know why she said that.
Do you have a favorite trope?
See, that's the thing. I don't know if I have per se like a favorite one. I'm definitely like trying to read romances that are less like stressful.
Sure.
Like I read the Girl Next Door by Chelsea Cameron, and I really liked how there wasn't like a big argument, there wasn't a big fight. It was just kind of they got to know each other, they fell in love.
Right.
It was a nice like low stress read. So
Sure.
I mean,
my whole theory about like quarantine and like existential societal stress reads is that there are two kinds of people. There are the people who want the like soft, gentle read about two decent people falling in love and everything being soft and gentle. And then there are the people like me who want everything to be destroyed and laid waste. And then at the end, they're together and they've survived. And I really do think that that you fall on one side,
One of
the
those,
other
one of the
spectrum.
continuum.
Yeah,
I think you and I are on that.
I know we're on like Mr. Vivisection.
Yeah, I've been reading a lot of like, I don't know, like
I just read
vampires and mafia romances and all that business.
I do not know. Adriana Herrera swears she yelled this name at me for like a year, but I did not know that. And yesterday I bought a book by Jodie Slaughter called All Things Burn, which is like a great title. Great title. And the cover is fabulous too. Anyway, I bought this book. The premise is the hero is a hitman, like a professional hitman, which always reminds me of that. You know, it's Chicago. It always reminds me of Grosse Pointe Blank.
Oh yeah,
right, which is not Chicago, but still reminds me of Chicago because of that man, isn't he?
John Cusack.
Thank you. This is why we need to. I need Jen always because I never have it.
Can I just tell you guys something? I don't know.
We're putting a pin in Grosse Pointe Blank. Go on.
Only I know Joan Cusack because I taught her kids.
Is she like as delightful in person as she is on the television?
Honestly, yes. Her whole family is. That's all I
love her so much. P.S. I've been watching John Cusack's like biking around Chicago, taking like street video of protesters, and I'm for it.
They're amazing. They're
baby me from like watching Lloyd Dobler holding a stereo over his head. Like the me who fell in love with that weird stalkery moment is back in love with John Cusack now. We fell out of love during Con Air when he wore Birkenstocks for a whole movie.
I love Con Air though.
Oh, I love Con Air too.
Fine.
But that's where I went morality chain. I think Con Air might be the source of my morality chain love.
Sure.
Different conversation for different time. Anyway, but actually kind of morality chainy. So anyway, hitman in Chicago, professional killer, and the heroine has a stalker who is threatening her family, her like sister and her sister's kids. And she goes to the police, and the police are like, sorry, like you can't prove it. We can't like. We don't know. We can't help. So she's like, well, fuck this. I'm going to take matters into my own hands. And she hires the hero as her hitman to off her stalker.
I want this so much right now.
Really great. Like, first of all, I'm all here for women's rage and like women taking matters into their own hands. But also it's like so sexy and also like so romantic because he's this hardened criminal who has like this like scoundrel's code, like no women, no children, like he doesn't kill women, he doesn't kill children, and he has to like, you have to tell him what your reasoning so that like, because he won't kill somebody for like a dumb reason,
right?
But if you have a stalker who's threatening your family, that's a fine reason and he'll take that job.
Yeah.
But also you're super hot and like the sex scenes are super hot.
Yeah.
And it's so, he loves her, he falls for her so hard, so instantly. And then it's like the thread of his morality coming back over time and like the way he sacrifices himself for her is chef's kiss.
Exciting. I'm excited to read that.
It's great. And then I said to Adriana, like, have you read this Jodie Slaughter person? And she was like, oh my God, I have been yelling at you about her for a year. And I apologize, but I just bought her other book, White Whiskey Bargain.
Yeah, that one's supposed to be great too. Yeah. My friend Liz, who likes them a little spicy, she was like, that one was real good. And I was like,
yeah, I'm for it. No, the sex scene in this book was terrific.
A book I'm really excited about coming out, I think the same day as Sarah's. So it's okay. Everybody should just buy both. Is
You're allowed.
Joanna Shoop's Devil of Downtown.
It's so good.
I mean, if you end of this show, you're like, I would like to order some books from Love Sweet Arrow. I would like you to order, which you should. I would like you to order these three, like, so it's The Rogue of Fifth Avenue, The Prince of Broadway, and The Devil of Downtown. And this is such a great series. It's set in Gilded Age, New York. And it is essentially, they're three sisters who are from like a real fancy society, family, and they don't really want anything to do with it. And the first one, the Rogue of Fifth Avenue, Mamie falls in love with her father's lawyer. And then the second one, which is amazing, which is Florence, Florence, wants to run a casino for women, and she goes to Clayton Madden and asks for essentially advice for how to like run her own casino. And so the third and final book in the series comes out again in 2 weeks, and it's called The Devil of Downtown. And in this one, the youngest sister, Justine, essentially goes to the most dangerous man in New York, Jack Mulligan, and says, I need your help. Essentially, like, it's really interesting, chasing down these deadbeat husbands who leave, and their wives are left trying to care for their kids without any help or support. And will you help me find this guy who works for you? And it is really, it's terrific. And I've got to tell you, it's great. I was like, it's just great. I'm so excited about.
Joanna is one of the best historical. I mean, she's possibly the best historical writer writing right now. She is at the top of her game. We are all chasing her. She is great.
It's really good. Yeah, it's terrific. I'm really excited about that one coming out. And I'm also excited about the audio coming out because I've been listening to them on audio when I do puzzles, and it's Justine, who can have multiple accents. Who knew?
A woman of many talents.
Yeah. So that's one. It's funny because I feel like a lot of the books I read, I'm reading like ahead, right? I'm reading arcs. I'm reading things that'll be coming out later in the summer. But this is great because then you can pre-order them from Love Sweet Arrow. The other one that's coming out in August is the next Alona Andrews Hidden Legacy book, Emerald Blaze, which I just read, and it is also very, very good, and I loved it.
Well, speaking of like arcs and stuff, I actually got my hands on Alyssa Cole's
Oh, the
mystery
thriller
art, and guys, you have
Which one? I couldn't hear you.
was it when they were watching us?
Yeah, the thriller, right?
Yeah, you're gonna want to read it.
Nice. Okay.
That's exciting.
I'm excited about that. Thrillers are my like go-to when I'm not reading romance. That's the other genre. Nothing else.
I feel like there is a little bit of a romance in there. So,
Of course. It's Alyssa. She would never leave us totally high and dry, right? I just read I also will like a kind of a mystery-ish story. I read like, do you ever read those Jack Reacher books? Have you ever read those?
Sure.
Like, they're terrific, right? I'm just like, give me all the action. And I read this one, I read one last week. I can't remember the name of it, of course. Oh no, I do. It's called Past Tense, which just made me laugh because I'm an asshole. And but the entire book, I was like, how is there like not a single, like not a whiff of romance in this book? I was dumbfounded by it.
Men.
Mm-hmm.
Can I tell you since you told your Joan Cusack story, can I tell you my Lee Child story?
Yes.
So I was at a wedding once, very posh wedding here in New York City, and I was seated at like the C team table at this wedding. And because I'm not posh, like I just was in the back. And I was sitting with there was another couple, and they were very lovely, and they found out that I was a writer. And he mentioned that his brother was a writer. And I said, oh, that's great. Like, and he said, oh yes. And I'm staying in my brother's apartment. Like we're in my brother's apartment here. And I was like, oh, your brother's a writer and he has an apartment in New York as like a pied-à-terre. That's amazing. What does he write? And he's like, thrillers. And I was like, oh, great. Well, I like to read thrillers. Would I know who he was? And he was like, yeah, probably. And then he stopped, and I was like, this man is gonna make me work for it.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, well, does he have a name? I was like, the guy's like, oh, he's Lee Child. And I was like, yeah, I've heard of him. Like, everyone has heard of your brother. And then I realized, and then Eric like kicked me under the table because he was like, that's why he didn't want to tell you his brother was.
Right.
Because suddenly the most interesting thing about this guy, who was really great and actually very cool, was that his brother was Lee Child.
Sure.
Anyway, it was really nice to meet him, though. He was very fun to be at a wedding with, even though we were on the C team together. In the way back.
It's fine. You had a good time.
We did. We had a great time.
You have more fun with the C team often is how it works.
It's true. He was super fun.
That's good. That's good.
My favorite, I'm trying to do this thing where I don't read men. It's working out great for me, actually. And so my favorite thriller writer these days is a woman named Sharon Bolton. If you've never read her books, she's British and she writes as both Sharon Bolton and S.J. Bolton. They're published, I think she's S.J. Bolton in the UK and she's Sharon Bolton here in the US. But my favorite of her books is called Now You See Me. And it's a thriller about, it's modern day, and the heroine is a detective for Scotland Yard. And she's really fascinated by the Jack the Ripper killings, and somebody is recreating them in London. And so she gets like pulled off of her desk and assigned to this like serial killer who's recreating the Ripper killings because she's an expert in them. And it turns out that was the killer's intent all along, to like bring her into his world. And it's real great. And then that's the first. And then there's a series of books with the same woman detective.
That sounds fun. I like that.
You know who else is really great is Karen Slaughter. Another Slaughter. This is a different Slaughter. Karen Slaughter also has like a great series of detective novels. And she and I did a panel together not long ago. And she was talking, and we talked about the fact that like, she got really interested in writing like detective novels that were about the way the world treats women and how women have to survive. And she does that really well. So if you're interested in sort of dipping a toe into the thriller world, if you are the kind of reader who is looking for everything to fall apart and then be stitched back together in your reading right now, Potter's a great choice.
Well, there you
I'm writing these down.
go.
Do you guys carry more than romance? Do you carry thrillers? Do you carry mystery at all?
No.
Like a romantic subplot, but
Mm-hmm.
focus.
Well, and then there's like a kids and kind of YA section, right?
Right.
Which is smart. Yeah. It's funny because I was going to say, like, the last book I read was not a romance or a thriller, but it was a YA graphic novel. I mean, if we're just talking about what we're reading, I might as well, called Dragon Hoops by Jean Yang, who wrote The Shadow Hero, which is a book I teach, and another book called American Born Chinese, which was terrific. And it's the story, he's a teacher, and it's the story of his school's basketball team and their like attempt to get to state. But it's also like his story about like writer's block and his family and like whether or not he wants to still teach or be a full-time comic, cartoonist. And it was great. A friend of mine recommended it, and I bought it. Sometimes I buy them and read them and then put them in my classroom library. And I was really like swept away by it. It was really, really fun. So, and then the other YA book, because I do a little bit, I try to catch up with YA in the summer, is You Should See Me in a Crown, which is a YA romance that it was like all over Twitter last week and would be a great book. And it just came in the mail today. So I'm really excited to read that one too.
Yeah, I just listened to that one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I went and looked up. I still have to figure out how we're gonna get it in the store because I don't know if we have an account with Scholastic yet. But definitely get that one.
Yeah. So yeah. So I mean, that's been. But other than that, I feel like I've been reading for the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I have some reading to do we're recording several times this week, and I have some reading to do for both of those. So
yeah, we're doing some real old school categories.
Yep, with Steve Amadown, and then tomorrow with Joanna Shoup, actually. So yeah,
Nice.
it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Nice. Rusted, is there a book you just read?
Well, I just listened to You Should See Me in a Crown, but a couple weeks ago, I ordered from Semicolon downtown, and I got the second book in the N.K. Jemisin's like the Broken Earth trilogy.
Oh yeah.
So I had the first one and I read it, and then I got the second one, and then I also got this.
Oh yeah, that one's terrific by
nice.
Mickey Kendall. Yeah, that's again in my classroom library. Yeah.
Yeah, I just finished it. I really liked it. It was fun. I haven't read a lot of graphic novels, but I was like, I've been meaning to read this, and so I got it, and yeah.
I also just got her book Hood Feminism, but I haven't read it yet. And I have that in the Mona Trethewey book, Seven Rules for Dangerous.
Mona Trethewey, yeah, 7 Necessary Sins for Women and Girls.
Yes.
Which is also on my desk because
like I made it happen.
Reading it for the 3rd time because I'm so obsessed with this book.
Oh, so maybe I should move that up my pile then.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
She's great.
Yeah. And then the other secret kind of hilarious thing is
Jen's frozen.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Well, we'll never know. We'll never know what the secret hilarious thing is. We're
That's
stuck.
it. Party's over.
with
Jen, you froze that whole time. Oh boy. Oh no.
Well,
this is where, for Fated Mates listeners, this is where I would typically text her and say, "You're frozen. Don't stop recording." Jen, are you back?
I'm back. Sorry. Are you?
No, you froze that whole time. Are you? We lost you at the secret hilarious thing.
Oh yeah. Okay. I ordered a bunch of Black Dagger Brotherhood books from Book Outlet.
You did?
And because they had a bunch, they were like a couple bucks each.
Amazing.
I know. So it's all these ones that I haven't read, because I like only read the first 4 or 5, and now I have a bunch of like random ones that are like the teens.
Amazing.
The Savior and Blood.
I wonder if you can read them out of order by the time you get up into
I
those
feel
numbers.
like you can. I feel like I'm like, it's gonna be fine.
It's fine. Drink a glass of wine, get started. It's fine.
I trust my own ability to make it through these JR awards. But yeah, after we did our episode,
Can I tell you?
I was like,
yeah,
these were good.
JR Ward and I, we exchanged a couple of emails a few months ago after our episode, but did I not tell you this?
No.
It wasn't about our episode. It was separate from our episode, but it was right around when RWA was imploding. She and I exchanged a few emails, and she is so cool. We had never spoken before, and she is just as cool as you would expect from those books. So we've lost Jen again, sadly. So Love Sweet Arrow, one thing that I wanted to say is, Marissa, you mentioned Semicolon, and I just wanted to point out to people who are listening that Semicolon is a Black-owned bookstore in Chicago, because they might not know. And I think all of us are trying to buy from Black-owned bookstores this week and always.
Right. Yeah, well, and it was like this week Sarah just sent out her newsletter. It was like buy 2 books by Black authors. So I ordered today Bell Hooks book and also a Reese Ryan book. So fine.
Nice. Had you read that Reese Ryan one that I recommended? Engaging the Enemy.
I have read that one, but I ordered the one, I don't even know. There's a very handsome bald man on the cover. And I mean,
there are handsome men on every cover.
Yeah, no, she's no fool. Like Reese
Harlequin
Ryan
is killing it right now with these covers.
They're amazing.
I'm a little concerned about the way covers are going to go after coronavirus, right?
Yeah.
Because my books, right? I go and and there are photo shoots for them. But now we can't have a photo shoot. We can't put 2 strangers together unmasked.
Yeah.
And so I wonder what's going to happen. I don't know if we're all going to move toward the illustrated front. I would love to see us going back to like painted covers. Like if we could go back to those old school, like Fabio style, like Scarlett Peckham's The Ray Kess, but painted.
Yeah.
My God, that would make my life. So I don't know. Jen, we lost you for much of that too.
I know. I'm sorry. I was gonna say, I think, it's almost 8:00 anyway, but my internet has clearly decided to be done with this event. Sorry. All day long. Like my husband will just be like,
well, you're very busy and important. So
I was like, my modem does not support my life apparently. So I don't know what I missed, but I'm sorry.
You missed me just pontificating on covers and saying that I would really like to go back to painted ones.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Wouldn't that be cool? I don't know. It's probably just you and me who would read them.
I don't care. The special Jen and Sarah cover of this book. Fine. I actually
sticker like Jen and Sarah approved.
Yeah, exactly. We're like the Reese Witherspoon of romance.
Nice.
All right. Well, I think Jen is done for. So
I wanted to show you my shirt since you have your
please.
Shirt. See?
Oh,
what's your
trope? I love it. Is this your trope? Is this your shirt from the store?
Yeah.
Yes. I love it.
Mm-hmm. And it
so
has our logo.
Cute.
So, yeah, Marissa wrote down some different choices, and then Ethan and his friend from art school, they designed it for us. So.
Oh, how fun!
Yeah.
It's really soft. I'm big on the soft shirt.
Nice.
Yeah, it's very comfortable.
Yeah.
I am wearing currently, for those of you who didn't notice, I'm wearing my Derek Craven Would Never shirt as a nod to both Fated Mates and our lovely friend Shannon Donahue, who immediately whipped this up for me when I asked her to create a card for Derek Craven Day for Jen this year,
I'm gonna get it framed. I'm excited.
which is February 4th for those
February
of you who
4th.
don't celebrate.
I mean,
I don't understand why you wouldn't celebrate Derek Craven Day, but
It'll be a
it
national
used
holiday.
to be that if you wrote Derek Craven Day into Google, it told you when it was. Hang on, I wonder if that's still the case. Oh my God. It's still, yes. If you Google Derek Craven Day, it pops up. February 4th is Derek Craven Day.
Nice.
Jen, this must be our proudest accomplishment that we created a holiday. Oh, Jen's frozen again. But I'm going to speak for both of us and say that our proudest accomplishment is that we created a holiday.
I was like, yes, I'm back, but I don't think it's gonna be for long. But I am proud of it, like very proud. We're holiday makers.
I mean, we have children. We have children and careers, but really, it's the holidays.
I made a holiday. I made a holiday. I mean,
Google says.
Next
All
needs
right.
to be Wikipedia. Once it's
Yeah.
on Wikipedia, that's it. Yes.
Oh, right, exactly.
That's a good point. I'm gonna get on that secretly later tonight. I'm gonna add it to the list of U.S. holidays page. Okay. Well, thank you for having us, and I'll see you at the store later this week.
Yes. Yes.
Congratulations on reopening.
Yeah. Thank you. Through the end of today, we're doing 10% off anything in the store online.
Oh, great. And you
then
can pre-order Daring and the Duke from you, right?
Yes. Yes.
And people
Yes.
have. And some people have done it where it's Dairy on the Duke and Double End on top.
See.
Oh,
There
see,
you
that's
go.
a perfect
Well done.
combo. Buy the combo from Love Sweet Arrow. Love Sweet Arrow, would you like me to ship you some signed book plates?
Oh, yes, we would.
Okay, we'll talk about that offline, but now you can get them with a signed book plate.
That would be
I happen to have 500 of them right on my desk.
There
along
you
with all
go.
these other things. You guys, I've been so prepared for this
Awesome. Good for
podcast.
you. Good for you.
Oh, and let's Patreon shout out. If from now to the end of June, if you become a patron for us on Patreon, then you will get a free signature Love Sweet Arrow candle in a tin.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
I was going to bring one home and I did not.
It's okay.
If you go on
That's
Instagram, you can see a
yeah.
picture.
You can see a picture. Yeah. We worked with Natalie Years and she designed a fragrance just for the store. So we'll have regular jar candles that you could buy through the store as well, since she designed it for us. So yeah.
I love it.
We were going to talk about today, but I wasn't at the store on Friday and I missed the shipment. So they came in today.
Nice.
Store candles. Yay!
Well, thank you guys so much for helping us celebrate. And everyone out there watching, hey.
Thanks for having us.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, Jen. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye, Jen. All right.